Good morning to everybody, and thank you for coming to this very important event that the Fondazione Luigi Einaudi has the pleasure to welcome in Rome today. The event is Putin's Europe in the Crucial Year and is organized by the European Liberal Forum together with Project Polska. And we are very glad to have the discussion that is going to start in a few moments here in Fondazione Luigi Einaudi, because as you know, we are always very involved in battle as well as in debate that promote liberal values, human rights and freedom, and especially on economic European integration. A group of experts and editors of different countries will debate the impact that the Putin strategy and is the way the Putin strategy is affecting the everyday life of people in Europe at the moment, and also the future of the international scenario as well as the future of Europe as well. You know, everybody knows that this war has deeply affected politically, especially, but in general terms, the life in Europe in the last years. And what is really threatening, in my opinion, is that the logic of the negotiation that is typically of the politics and of diplomacy is failing at the moment. It seems like the logic of the dominance, the logic of the power is prevailing now, and this is really very, very risky, not only for Europe, but I think it is also for all the international scenario. We have been used for a long time in Europe to be away from conflicts. The European Union is really born on the idea to bring and keep peace in Europe. And so the perception as well as the reality of the war is very much changed at the moment. And we are facing and confronting ourselves with that. The stable equilibria that we have been used for so long, I think, are in crisis. It seems like politics and diplomacy has strong difficulties to rebuild an international order, which is based, as I said before, on negotiation, on composition of different interests. But when the driver is basically to invade and to obtain territory, is very difficult to negotiate. It's very difficult to get to a solution. I think that in this meeting today we have several very important issues that we have to discuss, especially thinking of the future of Europe, thinking that the international equilibrium seems to be deeply changed. The US are weak inside. They are dealing with a political crisis of the democracy in the country, and I think that they cannot be anymore a kind of stable reference for Europe as well. So Europe has to have a role, and the outcomes of this transformation are difficult to be predicted and seems to be quite uncertain. Also because some alliances, like the one between Russia and China and China, are, I think, quite pragmatic. I think that they are based on contingent interest, and they may be as dangerous as the Putin dominance in Europe. So I really thank you all for being involved today in this important debate, and I'm sure that interesting thoughts and reflection are going to emerge, and we can share all together, thinking of our future in Europe. Thank you for coming, and thank you, Milos, for your initiative.
Thank you so much, Professor Galli. Here. Thank you so much, Professor Galli. Thank you so much, Emma. And I would like to invite all the panelists to join the table, to join the panel, and we will start discussion, the conversation really about Putin's Europe and the biggest challenges. Okay, so you go there. Before, wherever you feel comfortable, we can change the name. Yes. Before we start the panel, before we start the discussion, we would like to play a very short video, a message by our friend, by our colleague from the Ukrainian partner organization, Violeta Pashutina, the president of the Golos Kiev Foundation.
In 2023, the Kharkiv factory that printed this book was destroyed by Russian shelling last week. It is a vicious circle of darkness, and only with your help we can break it. Acknowledging that Russia is an empire and has imperialistic goals is critical in working on countermeasures to it. The empire is attacking not only states but democracy as a whole. They exploit democratic values to pave the way for propaganda through the freedom of speech and their political influence through the freedom of movement. We really need to strengthen our gatekeepers against that horrible influence. I believe it is clear to everyone. Putin won't stop unless he is stopped. We in Ukraine are ready to stop him, and what we really need is your support, military, political, and geopolitical. We need to work together as never before, since if Ukraine is defeated, the war and invasion of other countries is just a matter of time. We appreciate the current support that we are getting from our dear allies and partners. But what we need now is to shift from helping Ukraine fight, struggle and survive to letting us win the war, by giving us the possibility to protect the sky over all Ukrainian cities and providing us enough weapons to return all our Ukrainian territories and protect all the democratic world. Let us win the war. Let us protect our democratic values. Thank you so much, and glory to Ukraine.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We are very proud and happy that we can work with Violeta and her team in Kiev and in Ukraine. They are doing an amazing job not only basically supporting the democracy, because what's happening in Ukraine now, we all know that, but I think what will happen in the future once Ukraine win the war, and how they will be rebuilding the democracy, how they will rebuilding their freedom is crucial. And the fact that we have people who are thinking about that, who are thinking about freedoms, future democracy, open democracy, active society is absolutely crucial, I think, for the democracy, not only in Ukraine, but for all of us in Europe. So thank you very much, Violeta. And before I introduce you the panelists who are at the table, I would like to say that this project is organized by the European Liberal Forum, which is a think tank and a foundation of the ALDE party based in Brussels. ELF, European Liberal Forum, is a member-driven organization composed of over 50 think tanks and foundations all over Europe, not only in the EU, but also in other European states like Ukraine or Western Balkans or the Caucasus or the Nordic states. And we are working on the topics of democracy, of civil society, on the rule of law, all on technology and sustainability. And if you are interested in what ELF is doing, please check the website. All the publications, everything we do is available there. They're for free. And yeah, we are trying also to spread this message of freedom all over Europe, having discussions on the most crucial and important topics. And one of the topics we identified, and I would say it's an obvious one, was exactly the influence of the Kremlin in Europe. And this was of course the main idea behind the book we created last year, which was published basically December last year or early January this year, called Putin's Europe. And with this publication, we wanted to map the influence of the Kremlin in Europe. So we asked, I think 14 authors to work with us on this challenge, and we asked them to to map the influence of Putinism, Russia in economy, in European politics, in European information and culture. Also, we focused on a few states that we find particularly vulnerable, like Hungary. So I would definitely recommend you to look at the book. It's again on the website of the European Liberal Forum. You can download it for free from the website. And I'm very happy we can discuss today this topic, this publication, but mostly I would say this topic with this fantastic panel composed of 3 authors of the publication, and also one expert who is not an author, and we'll be very happy also to see this let's say external from the book, but definitely internal if it comes to expertise and knowledge about the topic. So let me introduce the panel. And so on my left-hand side, Renata Gravina from Fondazione Luigi Einaudi, who, as I said, is one of the authors and expert also in history of Russia and Eastern Europe. Thank you, Renata, for being with us, and thank you so much for organizing the event for us, because without Renata, this event could not happen. Then on my right-hand side, we have Professor Domenico Fracchiolla from the Mercatorum and Lewis University. Thank you so much, Professor, for being with us. Patrik Oksanen from Sweden, researcher connected with Forest Institute, but also an expert in defense, connected with the University of Defense in Stockholm. Thank you so much, Patrik, for being with us. And last but not least, Mila Moshelova from Bulgaria, who is a political analyst of the Cogito Institute, I can say, right, of the Cogito in Sofia, who is also an author of the publication. My name is Miłosz Hodun. I'm from Poland. I'm a member of the board of directors of the European Liberal Forum, and I was one of 2 editors of this volume, and I'll be moderating this discussion. And I invite you, dear audience here in Rome, to to get involved in the discussion. So if you have any questions or comments, please raise your hands whenever you're ready. You don't have to wait until the end of the panel, let's say, or the official part. If you have anything to add, we'll be very happy to exchange, because this is, we believe, the best dynamic way to have this discussion. And also, I'm very happy to say that we are live. We are live on YouTube and on other social media channels by Fondazione Luigi Einaudi. So we are even more than we are here in Rome. And I think I would like to start with a very simple, okay, maybe not so simple, a broad question about where we are now. After 2 years of this full-scale invasion, you know, many things has changed in Europe. 2 years ago, it was a wake-up call for many European societies, for many European elites, for many European politicians. We realized things that were invisible for many people in Europe, again, especially for elites. The fact that Violeta said that this war has not been lasting for 2 years. It's been, you know, going on for over 11 years. Many people in Europe did not see that. We only saw that 2 years ago when the full-scale invasion started. And then we started to track Putin's influence in our societies, in our political scenes, in our media scenes. And I would like to ask you, so what's the situation in your countries, also maybe in the European context? Have we finally realized that there is a lot of Putin's Europe in Bulgaria, Sweden, Poland, Italy, and other countries? So maybe Mila, could you please start with the situation in Bulgaria? 11 elections in 3 years. How much of that, you know, is connected to the fact that Bulgaria has been always having this special links with Russia, and there is this pro-Russian sentiment among the big part of the society and the political class?
Thank you, Milos, and thank you to all the panelists and the organizers for the opportunity to talk about Bulgaria, but also find the common denominators with the other countries, because we clearly face very similar problems. The way it's related when it comes to elections in particular, and I will make a reference to the text in the book that I looked into. My interest in the topic was to see whether around moments of governmental instability and general political instability, if Russian narratives and pro-Kremlin narratives spike up in social media in particular, because as we know, that's unfortunately one of the main channels for propaganda and hybrid warfare, at least in Bulgaria. I had a conversation with a political consultant who works a lot in Central and Eastern Europe recently, and he was looking at some data for Bulgaria, and he said, I didn't know that you're the Facebook country, which means that Facebook is the main source of information for a lot of people. And my interest came from this, that you see a lot of narratives being filtered in social media, but in not necessarily politically affiliated groups. So they come through, you know, channels for exchanging recipes for cakes or talking about events in the region, and somehow, little by little, then you get this pro-Russian narrative filtered through. And then the other interesting aspect at the other end, almost, is the fact that some of these narratives enter political discourse. So it's almost like a testing ground, what would work and what wouldn't work. So this is where my interest came from. And of course, unfortunately, we see that around moments of political instability, the filtration of these narratives grows. We have had a lot of elections, and actually, largely so, this is the consequence of, partly, of course, not fully, but of the degree to which Russian influence is strong in Bulgaria, because a lot of the governmental agencies and political elites are very complacent with Russian influence when it comes to the energy sector, secret services, and also political influence through embassies and think tanks and so on. So we actually see, and of course the social media, but we have openly pro-Russian politicians like our president. So in this term, in this sense, it has been very strong in, you know, offsetting a more pro-European and pro-democratic path, which should have been hopefully, or at least partially established 35 years after 1989.
Thank you so much for this introduction. I would like to ask, something more. So, do you think the situation of Bulgaria is special in Europe? Like, are you particularly connected to Russia, or your political class is actually particularly connected to Russia? If you look at your neighbors, is there something more there? Do you see that the influence, or do you think that the influence of Russia is stronger, is bigger in your country than in others?
Thank you. So I think I can make a contrast to the rest of Europe first and then to the region. And this is something that came up in the conversation that, with the colleagues on the panel we had previously to the panel. In what I think makes Bulgaria stand out, and not in a good way, if we look at more Western European democracies, we see that the pro-Russian and pro-Kremlin attitudes in politics belong to the periphery of the party system. And then we see in Bulgaria and in the region that they actually belong to the center-right, center-left, and the more mainstream political actors. So I would say that this is one thing. The other thing is that these actors are discursively pro-European, so they're Euro-Atlantic in their orientation. They sit in the European Parliament, including, but then they also allow the Turkish Stream, which is a pipeline which goes through Bulgaria, does not supply gas for Bulgaria, but goes straight to Serbia and Hungary, for example. And this is a connector. This is an infrastructure that was built very fast at a great cost for Bulgaria financially, serving Russian interests to surpass Ukraine. And in the meantime, the connector between Greece, Bulgaria, and Romania was held at a standstill. And then these are the pro-European politicians that sit in the European Parliament and are center-right, for example. So this is a very telling example, and I think Bulgaria, it's not like special or very interesting in that way. I mean, I find it interesting, but it's because it provides a very good case study for developments we see elsewhere. And at the end, with the Turkish Stream in particular, because we talk about Ukraine, of course, we see that this is not a matter of national security only, it's a matter of European security.
Thank you so much. So, and Patrick, in Sweden, like, is it different? I guess it is different. Mila just said that this pro-Russian views, this pro-Russian sentiment is almost a part of like a mainstream political party life. And how is it in Sweden? Is it the same?
Well, if we look at the political mainstream life in Sweden, I would say that pro-Russian sentiments are a non-starter. Because all parties in the parliament, they are totally united in the support of Ukraine, and all parties are also united in to raise the defense spending to 2.6% of GDP by 2030. So we see in parliament, in mainstream politics, a total support for Ukraine, and trying to be pro-Kremlin, pro-Russian in the Swedish politics is really beating you at the polls. So the parties that have had those kinds of ties earlier, most on the left side of the former Communist Party, and also on the populist right, the Sweden Democrats, they have quickly kicked out or silenced the pro-Russian individuals they have in the party. So mainstream, there is not much of Putin's Europe in the Swedish politics. But if you look on another level, the whole alternative media landscape is pro-Russian. So there you have it. And we also see that Russia is good on spreading disinformation, spreading chaos, destabilizing things. And let me here just take the example of cyber attacks that are ongoing, and also the case of the Quran burning outside the Turkish embassy in January 23, which led eventually to a delayed NATO accession, and also that the Swedish embassy in Baghdad was stormed and terrorists murdered 2 Swedish national soccer team fans in Brussels before a game between Sweden and Belgium. And this happened, the Quran burning outside the Turkish embassy happened by a person in the far-right environment where pro-Russian sentiments are a lot. And the idea to have this burning came from two other persons from different pro-Russian media alternative groups. And here I want to stress that we cannot say this was a Russian operations. That we do not know. We have not conclusions to draw on that, but we know where they come from in the media environment, and also that one of the media groups have overt relations with Russian intelligence. And then Russia started false flag cyber attacks on Sweden under the umbrella of Anonymous Sudan. And these guys were not anonymous, and they were not Sudanese, they were Russians. And they said that they were doing these cyber attacks in protest of the Quran burning, and that Sweden was an Islamophobic country. And we saw also that Russia fueled disinformation in the Arab world around this occasion, and this led to strong reactions and also, of course, independent reactions in the Muslim world around this. Then Iran jumped into it. Well, and the next is history. So here you see the footprint of Russia spreading chaos and so discord.
This is very interesting. Let me add to that also maybe a little of experience from Poland, because for many years, I think even now, we thought, okay, Polish society and Polish political elites are so anti-Kremlin that we are almost, it's impossible that Russian intelligence or Russia would attack us in any way inside the country, because everybody is so sensitive towards Russian propaganda and towards Russian actions. And then 2 weeks ago, I think, we had massive fires, one after another. A massive landfill, a huge mall in Warsaw, a school next to Warsaw, part of a national forest in a national park. And still, there is no proof. Nobody is saying, we can prove it's Russia. But more and more facts, they get connected. Also, earlier this year, a Ukrainian citizen was arrested in the city of Wrocław because he was cooperating with Russian services, and he was tasked to set a painting company, a painting factory on fire. So we see that there is something with fires and Russian influence, which is very new, and we know that we can expect more. So I think this is really also a new chapter for a country like Poland, where political class, basically it's a consensus that everybody is anti-Kremlin, anti-Putin. But then you have now some little loopholes, I think, in the system, and the Russian intelligence is using it.
And I would like to add to that picture a bit.
Mike.
Sorry. I'd like to add to that picture a bit, because last year British police went out stating in public that they know that intelligence from Russia, China, North Korea and Iran are using criminals within UK without the obvious ethnic connection between the groups. So I mean, for example, the Russians could find a Swede that is a criminal in the UK and use him. And the British police said that they were tasked, among other things, also to harass individuals. And in Sweden, yesterday, the Swedish Security Service confirmed that Iran have the capability to use criminal gangs in Sweden to attack Jewish and Israeli targets. And there have been a case where 2 teenagers were taken in an attack on the Israeli embassy to throw a grenade. So we see this development going really fast. In Estonia, 10 people were arrested who were recruited on social media, among other things, to vandalize cars belonging to the interior minister and an editor-in-chief, for example. So we see the pattern, and it's not a coincidence.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a coincidence. And this is also very interesting that you said, for example, teenagers, right? Because this intelligence is targeting new groups, not the most obvious groups, not like, warriors or something. They're targeting people that we would call like normal citizens, and many migrants who came, I'm talking mostly, my knowledge is about Poland, who come to Poland, who are not very well off, and they are looking for some little income, and just communicating online, they are doing little jobs, little tasks for these people who are on the other side. And we can see this gamification of this, let's say, acts of terror, that they get little money for putting an anti-Ukrainian graffiti on a wall. And then they get a little bit more for putting an online camera in front of critical infrastructure, something very small. And then they get a PDF with instruction how to build a bomb. So it's like a kind of gamification. You get more and more, and your rewards are more and more, and you're collecting. But I would like to, Patrick, ask you one more question. In your text in the book, you focused on the church. Why the church? Because why the church in Sweden should be a topic in the book about Putin's influence?
Well, on a general level, we must understand that the Russian Orthodox Church is a tool for Russian imperial power, and this has a long tradition in Russia. It was disconnected and kicked out basically by Lenin, but Stalin reinstated the Moscow Patriarchate in 1943 and put it under control of the Russian service at the time, the NKVD. And in Sweden, we have a case in the city of Västerås, which lies close to Stockholm, 5 minutes from Sweden's third longest runway, an airfield. They have now built a €3 million church in wood, and then you should remember the congregation is 100 person in that parish, so it's a lot of money. And they got to buy the land and got a building permit, and on the same time they had 2 people in the local permit board that were aligned with the church and did not disclose that. The priest, who was also a CEO of a Russian-owned company, was convicted for money laundering, and then also that finally, when the church was inaugurated this November, we got to know who paid it, and it was a church fund from Rosatom, the state energy company of Russia, who also creates the nuclear weapons. So it was really a centralized aspect. And what we see a pattern when we look at where the Moscow Patriarchate have been trying to establish itself, in Sweden and Norway, we see a very clear pattern on establishing churches and footholds close to important infrastructure. And this goes with another pattern that we see in the Nordic Baltic countries, Russian buying for a long time properties close to strategic places. In Norway, for example, the Russian Orthodox Church bought a church outside, a house outside of Bergen. On the other side of the fjord lies Norway's most important naval base. And for convenient measures, you should not have bought that property, because then you want to be more closely to Bergen, where the people are. So the pattern is really clear. And we know, for example, on general term also that the Patriarch Kirill has talked about that the imperial war in Ukraine is a holy war, and so on. So that is why it's relevant to point on what the Moscow Patriarchate are doing in various countries. And as an add-on also, which is not reflected in the text, in the beginning of the year it was reported that the Swedish Security Service stated that the Moscow Patriarchate in Sweden have connections with the Russian intelligence, and as a result of that, Sweden have decided to withdraw state grants to the congregation. In Sweden, religious organizations get smaller state grants for having congregation services and so on, so that has now been scrapped.
Thank you very much for explaining it a little for our audience. I think it's extremely interesting the way that the Russian Patriarchy, the church, is involved in many countries in this war against Western values. But also I think it's very interesting how other churches sometimes are falling into a trap of promoting the ideology of promoted also by pro-Kremlin organizations. And yeah, Italy. So here we are blessed with two Italian experts. So I hope you can share the voice, or you can
Please, first ladies.
Okay, so Renato, let's start with you. And you wrote about you wrote about crisis of liberalism. You wrote about hyperglobalization and the backlash it produces to the middle class and lower class, and how this also provokes or maybe accelerates the nation state agenda of many parties, this sovereignistic rhetorics. So can we observe all this in Italy? Like, is this where Italy is right now? Because the view, the message we are getting about Italy is like, okay, so there is the Giorgia Meloni who there was an expectation about her, and now she is decent because she is anti-Russian, but basically she is in a coalition, and her party is also involved in some coalitions on European level with partners who are cooperating with Russia on one way or another. So where is Italy in all that?
Okay, thank you, Milos. Yeah, I mean, my chapter was not, I mean, the perspective of my chapter was about liberalism, so not about Italy, but the idea is that, in my opinion, there is Putin's Europe in Italy in the way that from a general point of view, we have been having a great relationship with Russia from an historical and cultural point of view. And then we had either from the left side and from the right side of the political Italian parties, a great and a deep relationship with Russia. I would say that from the extreme left side, the problem is that we had an important relationship with the Communist Party. So we are still facing that, I mean, in years. And from the right extreme side, we have been having a great relationship with, for example, with the exponent of Lega, which has been, and it is, a coalition with Giorgia Meloni. So the problem was that since the beginning of the war, so to more than 2 years, we have this kind of new Atlanticism in which Italy is, of course, involved. So Giorgia Meloni she has to be Atlanticist anyway, and she is also, because she's a protagonist of the new conservative way of seeing Europe in a new kind of Italian right-wing era. So she's not only forced; she has her own program about that. But the problem of Italy is that we were not prepared, because we don't got the chance to take, for example, natural sources before the beginning of the war. So now we are completely dependent from an economic and also from an energetic point of view with Russia. And this is, I think, our pillar, our tackle, our challenge with this new era. And I don't know, it will depend from the elections. Because I mean, if the majority would be, if the right wing will gain, I mean, from the Commission, from the Parliament, it would be a new challenging era for the New Deal, for example. So I don't know. It will depend from the national, but also from the international perspective. I don't know if Professor wants to add.
Yes. I mostly agree with Professor Gravina, and first of all, I would like to thank you for this invitation. But just to answer to the question, I would say that we have to see, we have to widen the spectrum. And Professor Galli was considering that Europe is at the crossroads, as well as Italy has been, and he's still at the crossroad. And even without the war in Ukraine, we were experiencing many important and fundamental changes in the international community, and Europe and Italy were at the fore of these changes going on. So we have been experiencing the last 2 years wars, of course, Ukraine, but also now in the last 6 months, the Middle East is something very changing the international relations and the situations. The elections, in the history of mankind, this has been the 2024, the most important year in terms of election. Never in history so many people, so many citizens in the world were going to vote. And then also the problem of the future of globalization, with the deglobalization, the rise of China, and so on. And within Europe, the problem with this election, the next election, with the rise of populism, and so the possibility that in the parliament almost possibly we will have at least 2 big European parties, family of right, one more conservative, let's say, and the other one more anti-European, anti-Euro, and also Euroscepticist. Going back, so all of these were usually since the Second World War, in the period of difficulties, the international relations theory has been recurring and using the spectacles of realist approach to the international relations. And so the logic of the power politics and the balance of power, but the simplification that has been produced using those spectacles has been evident in the public opinion and in the usage that Putinism and Russia has been explicating in their relationship with the European Union countries and public opinion. So to answer to the question regarding Italy, so Italy, I agree with the points that Professor Gravina was underlining regarding the heritage of the Communist Party, but it's more than that, actually. Is it not only on the left, but also on the right, as we very well known today, and as in the book has been highlighted, there are important flows of money, of funds, of black funds, going to right-wing parties, because this authoritarianism that Putin has been established in Russia deals very well and speaks very well with right-wing extremists. So I think that since the beginning, we have been trying to deal with our democratic instruments, with the menace, with the attack coming from the Kremlin, not only in Ukraine, but also in European Union politics and public opinion. So I think that we have been learning a little bit, but of course, the mediatization of the war that we have been seeing since the beginning now is in the period of, let's say, kind of public opinion fatigue, because it's not, it is very bad to say, to talk in that way, but it is not more trendy. Now people are more interested in watching the war in the Middle East. So this is very bad, but it is what is going on. And the good point of this, because there is always a good point, a good perspective, is that regarding the disinformation and also the misinformation, that is something a little different from disinformation, we are dealing with it a little better. And also the political debate in Italy now is more, it has more knowledge of these threats coming from many actors, and especially in the cyberspace, of course. We still are suffering from cyber attacks, but still, I think that the main point that was the false idea that of democracy and also the mechanism for democracies that were just forgetting the lesson of Karl Popper, that you should not you should tolerate anyone except the one that don't tolerate you. So you need to be intolerant with with one that is not tolerating you. So now it has been a little by little applied, because at the beginning, we were in the talks in television and in the newspaper, in the media, and also in the political arena. We were dealing with many positions that were saying, well, we are in democracy, and so we are pluralist, and we need to have the same space, the same importance to the argument of Putin and Russia. And so there was this equation that now is no more working between Putin, Russia, and peace. Because in Italy, those that were pro-Russian, they were saying, we want peace. So, okay, now I think that there is no more that so evident that position. Regarding the political parties, I think that Brother of Italy has been experiencing really an evolution in that. And with this also, I think that also the political family, the political party in Europe, the conservative and reformists, they are developing a position against Russia. So I really think that they are different from the other one, the identity and democracy, that are still pro-Putin, we can say that. Even if at the national level, for example, even Salvini now is saying that he is against. And so maybe I'm talking too much, so I will continue later.
No, it's definitely not too much. It's very inspiring, and you said that there is more knowledge now that we have. My question is if there is more will to use this knowledge, and also you said about 2024. This is the super election year.
Yeah.
All over the world, right? Half of the world's population is going to vote. It's extremely important for us here in Europe because we will elect the European Parliament, but also, I guess, we have the US elections, which are important also for us in Europe. So I guess it's my question to all of you. What will change for us, and what will change for Europe vis-a-vis Kremlin after these European elections and maybe American elections? Do you see any positive scenarios, anything positive that may happen after 2024? Can we enter 2025 with some positive change and be more hopeful, or this is all doom and gloom and you don't see anything positive here? Anybody would like to start? Patrick, please.
Well, there are a lot of scenarios where things can go wrong. Let me first say that. And with that said, the best scenario that we can hope for is that we'll have US not going havoc, and also that we can be able, after the European election, to form a commission that could continue the path that is right now ongoing. But I do totally agree with Professor Fracciola that the situation is complex, and we must also understand the complexness of it, and then we can add also climate change and the stress that does to the society. We could add the now fast development of artificial intelligence, which of course creates opportunity, but also new threats and vulnerabilities, and also how these things could play into the revanched axis of China, Russia, Iran, and how they might use these vulnerabilities. So the situation is really complex, and here I don't think we fully grasp the situation, and we do definitely not act on the complexity of the situation, because we are still sleepwalking into this chaotic decade that could lead to a very, very depressing future outlook of this century. So we must do a lot more and really get our act together. And we are moving in the right direction, but it's too little, too slow, and the situation is urgent.
My feeling is, Patrick, that you tried to be maybe a bit optimistic, but you were actually very pessimistic.
Well, I'm an optimist that democracies have a superpower, but we have not unleashed that superpower. And the superpower is being free societies, free individuals. We tend to be slow on the ball, but when we do understand it, we have this fantastic power to solve things and work together, because unlike our adversaries, we can do it without fear, and we do what we defend. We know what we defend, and why that is important. And that is why, even if things are dark, we should never underestimate our ability to do good things and turn the tide.
Thank you. Anybody else? And maybe I'll add one more element to that. Oh, sorry. I will maybe add one more thing to that is, if Trump wins, actually, can it help us as Europe? Like, can we get more organized around the idea that Putin is enemy of European Union, of democracy, of the free world, and we actually have to do something as European Union, as Europe, to be safe, independent, and secure?
Well, in my opinion, the main difference between, the Republican or Democratic elector choice regarding U.S. election will be related to protectionism. To the economic U.S. protectionism. In this way, we should be ready to face a new kind of wave of protectionism. But the pillar we have to face anyway is the pillar of defense. We have to get independent, like to be a real European defense anyway. This is something we are discussing already since years. So this is not only related to the war, because Trump was discussing it years ago. So the idea, we just have to decide whether we want to do like Europe, like a bilateral format between Europe and NATO, or we can go, on an independent way, because that anyway we will have to face not only for Russian war, but in general for having like our economic defense expenditure for the future.
Thank you, Professor.
Yes, I can say that since the failure of the end of history and the starting of the rebirth or return of geography or geopolitics, this year, as we are saying, is very complicated. But the answer regarding Trump is a little difficult, because we have the unpredictability of Trump's foreign policy and in general of Trump's stance. But we know that in a way there could be some positive point, in a way that he really has the possibility to negotiate a peace. But the point question is that what kind of agreement, what kind of peace? In his previous experience as president of the United States, he was kind of showing this attitude of scaring everyone. So we had this positive effect on the international community in the sense that the check and balances systems of the United States were functioning, the bureaucratic system was functioning, the political elite and the diplomacy, the State Department was working very well. And so we had a positive effect, because we didn't have any wars with him, with his previous presidency. So this could be a positive point, but still is a little weak. Apart of this, I would like to say that there is a time variable that we have to consider. We were saying that in democracies, changes are a little slower than the possibility of taking decisions in autocratic regimes. That is true, but the time variable and the space variable in the long term, for sure, they run in the favor of democratic systems. So, of course, we have a war, we have people that are dying, so we have this urge of ending it. But we know that there is one point that I think is not well underlined, that is the culture of our history. We have been witnessing in Europe, Renata was considering that before, or maybe you, that we didn't have been at war since 1945. That means not only that we didn't have a war, but it means also that in Europe we've been installing and consolidating very strong democratic systems around all European Union. And this as a weight, this as an heritage that is very important. And and I think that we, besides the risk of extremists and populism, and also maybe we undervalue the fact that citizens, European citizens, are very unsatisfied of this kind of European integration. They want more. They don't like the way European Union was dealing with the problems, and there is this idea that probably if it doesn't work, maybe it's better to change everything and to vote for populists and Euroscepticism. But we have many possibilities, and European Union, as Renata was saying, was recalling the need for European defense. Just think about this. European defense now is really on the table of the political agenda in European Union. And just if you think about 3 years ago, no one was talking about that. And European defense is something that we are waiting since the 50s. And Italy has been playing an important role in this with our Alcide De Gasperi, that was proposing and was having a very important role in the European defense community, and also with the article, which articles was it, 58 or 48 of the treaty, where it was included the possibility of having a political European community on the basis of the defense community. So really, I think that we lack some political elite. We need a more political participation, but I don't want to be completely pessimistic. I think that we have many problems, but in the long run, we have the possibility and the strength and the culture and the force to overcome all of these problems. Again, sorry if I'm too long.
It was not too long. Mila?
Yes, thank you. Maybe I can build up on what my colleague said so far. So I think the main thing that we've learned is that Russia is not an external threat. It's an internal threat to each country that we mentioned, many we didn't mention, regions and Europe as a whole. And then I think that we are just between the realization that we need to protect ourselves, but we also need to change. So I think that this is the big task for the European Parliament and the Commission in particular, because we know that legislation predominantly comes from there. And then when it comes to the positive and the negative scenarios, I think sitting in Italy and having the Italian expertise here on the panel, we hear that there are going to be issue coalitions in the new European Parliament. So we know that at least on Ukraine, even with Meloni there, we know that we can keep track on this issue, but then it will be hard on other ones. So at least for me, the projections about the radical right expanding its vote in the European Parliament, first, they're not much different to 2019, because back then we were also scared, different context, but of course. And then the second thing is that we know that at least on some issues, we can keep sane. Of course, the same doesn't go about immigration and the Green Deal, but I think that the issue coalitions is something that I cannot stick with when I want to stay positive, so it gives me hope that we can adapt. And then for me, the threat is whether the political center in the European Parliament, and in this sense in Europe, can really hold off to the temptation to co-opt the agenda of the radical right. So I'm hoping that they can really, stay sane on this, and we, as practitioners in our countries, to keep the debate about politics in the center.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from the audience? I think we'll be very happy to answer, or any comments, anything you would like to add. Yes, please.
I would just like to underline one aspect that was intrigued mostly by the Ukrainian lady, which is all the different aspects whereby we can support, we can really support Ukraine. And I think important thing to remember and to sort of focus on nowadays is that one that we are the least capable in is geopolitics. So, and geopolitics is what? Geopolitics is what unites, in a way, different fields of expertise, of knowledge, of study. So we should sort of, I'm very much in favor of creating, creating new study groups, creating forces, think tanks that united under the umbrella of geopolitical studies, but that, of course, are involved with politics, culture, economics, and economists. So I don't want to peddle my fears too much, but anyway, politics is, of course, very important. But the aspect where we are really not up to the point these days is really geopolitics.
Thank you, ma'am, for your intervention here, because I think you point here on a big problem that we have. We tend to look at issues into silos, where we see it too small, because, for example, now we have a debate on Chinese cars that is coming into Europe and have been price lowered by the Chinese, and now it's a threat for our car industry. That is not my main headache. My main headache, and which keeps me awake at night, is the fact that all the information that they collect and then send it over to China. So all the electronic Chinese cars, or if you have a Chinese vacuum cleaner perhaps in your home, send out your data. And there was an example of a Swedish internet CEO last year who found out that his automatic Chinese vacuum cleaner was filming in his home and recording sound in his home and loaded it on a server in China. And when we add all these things together and then add artificial intelligence and see the threat picture of the full spectrum of it, then I don't sleep at night. And without understanding the bringing in experts from various fields who have experts in various areas and then put the geopolitical understanding and umbrella on it, that is what is needed to grasp the situation. So I think it was an excellent remark.
Well, if I may, I would like to say that maybe cyber diplomacy can be an ease for your headache, in a way that cyber diplomacy, it helps in dealing with the problems that states or actors that are in the cyberspace can have in defending their national interest or defending their interest. So geopolitics actually can be applied also in the cyberspace, because what you were saying was the complete anarchy that we have in the cyberspace. But now in the last 5 years, 10 years, states and actors, international actors, are starting to understand that they need to do something, and the number of cyber ambassadors around the world in each nation state has been rising. We have many offices, diplomatic offices appointed also, as we know, in the Silicon Valley and in other big tech and international organizations. So it is a really, as NATO has been saying recently, is another dimension of security besides land, sea, and air, space. Now we have cyberspace, if I may consider that.
Yeah, and we have cyberspace, and that is an arena of conflict. And I was in a working group with the Royal Swedish Society of Academy of War Sciences, and our conclusion in that cyber working group is that we are in a conflict with state actors in the electronical and cognitive arena, and we need to admit that.
Yes.
And draw the conclusion: how should we include this in international law, and our view on cyber into the Geneva Convention? How do we apply cyber in NATO's Article 5,
yeah.
or Lisbon Treaty 42.7? And so far, we tend to see cyber as not happening for the real world.
Oh, no.
Because
Exactly.
otherwise we would have reacted. I mean, take for an example, the Norwegian parliament was cyber hacked by Russian GRU, and the Norwegian government went out and attributed the GRU. Only one country went out publicly in support for Norway, and that was Ukraine. But imagine now that GRU would have gone out from the Russian embassy with Kalashnikovs, stormed the Norwegian parliament, taking trunks of documents and running back to the Russian embassy. Then we would have consultations of at least Article 4.
Yeah, and I agree, but there are for sure some problems that need to be fixed, starting from the problem of attribution, that in the cyberspace it is something still unsolved.
I just add something. There are issues and there are actors. So I think the issues can be several. We can start all of them, elaborate on more and more issues. But geopolitics is what actually identifies the actors that work on these issues. Take one thing, like the well-known Russian disinformation. I mean, how do you struggle against disinformation? How do you attack it? How do you bring it up as a test? And you can do only as a counterpart made up of different actors that go counter disinformation. So that is why I think geopolitics stays a crucial and central point, in all our and I think it has to stay that way in all our discussions.
Yeah, and if we don't understand the actors and what they want to achieve, we will fail to deal with the issues as well.
Yes, but for instance, I'll take the point of negotiations with possible, in quotes, negotiations with Russia. I mean, how can we approach them? How can we tackle them if we don't act as a unity, as a sort of world force opposed to Russia?
Well, this is another very important point, because we were mentioning cyber defense, but then there is European foreign and security policy that still is very fragmented and divided, and there isn't this political will at this stage. We have to admit this.
Yeah, but
So,
like it is, of course.
Stefano said, on the question to all of you, I was thinking, it seems like the US cannot play anymore a role of guardian of the West in Europe. They're weak inside, they gradually are more and more far away from the foreign policies. And if Trump gets to the presidency, it's even worse, because there is no way to negotiate a peace that is not in favor of Putin. So I think it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
Now, the point is that which country or countries are really willing to play the role that the US was playing for so long in the international relation? Because my impression is that without the United States, there is a big question mark of who are the countries that are going to defend, the Western values after the US. And and Europe seems to be, as you say, still very fragmented. So it's true that finally we're discussing the common defense policy, since we didn't do it before, so that was an occasion to do it. But it seems like there is not really a strong willingness to replace the US, and so it seems like there is really a big question mark of how the equilibrium, the international equilibrium is going to change. Who are going to be the actors?
Yeah, of course. I mean, no. If there's any comments on that, I mean, I personally believe that there is much more will, right, that we have ever in the EU to actually work on this topic, and we can see it both on the Commission side. So basically, EPP, the biggest group in the Parliament, but right now the most hawky politician in Europe when it comes to defense is Macron, and France is probably with the nuclear. Sorry. Yeah, I think in ambitions, I think this is part of the ambition and of the legacy, which is connected to the industry. But it's connected to the fact that they have nuclear weapons and they have the industry they want to protect. But I think that there is ambition, so there is momentum. The question is where we will go, and I hope after the elections we'll actually go into this direction. We'll have the commissioner for defense. We'll have a new budget, but if there is any.
Yeah, I would like to say something. I completely agree, and you raised a very important point. And the answer is that no one can replace the role of the United States. So we now the situation is similar to the one that we had at the beginning of the 50s with the election of Eisenhower, where Eisenhower was saying to Europe that we need to do more for our defense. But in the end, again, we're United States that were helping Europeans and European integration and European Union. I don't think that Macron, for example, or any countries in Europe has the power and the strength to take the role of the United States. What we are witnessing is that, for example, in the Middle East, in the last months, China is rising. And there was this speech of a special envoy of the United Nations to Yemen a few days ago, that he was underlining the importance of China in the negotiation for peace between Iran and Saudi Arabia that were playing a central role for Yemen. And he was saying how important has been China in the Yemen history. And this since the end of the Second World War, that this was something really strong and shocking. But the reason for that is that United States now, after Obama, Asia Pivot is continuing on that policy. And so there is an empty space that someone has to fill. But China or other countries, they cannot take the place of the United States or Europe or Western countries in order to defend our values. That's the point. And so I think that in the long run, United States will come back. That's my idea. That's my will.
Otherwise, the risk is that everyone has its own enemies.
Yes.
First thing. And second, China, I mean, they have a very, that's the way I see it, but I don't know, I'm asking you. China seems to be very pragmatic. I mean, the country goes for alliance that may be completely changed, to time, because they are just driven by, the contingent interest, and that's another element of uncertainty, I think, in the international scenario. And now,
yes.
China is not.
Yes, that's for sure. In the last 10 years, they started to leave the focus only on the economy, international economy, and they started to have a political agenda indeed, with the Road Belt initiatives and the presence in Africa, in Asia, and so in the Middle East. And so they have their own political agenda that is linked with the economic needs, that it's the possibility of becoming completely autosufficient, self-sufficient, yes. And so for some natural resources and so on. So at the geopolitical level, this is a big change. But still, China cannot be at this stage the actor that is defending Western values. That's for sure.
China's aim is another system of the world, the Chinese world. But I also would like to underline that the Chinese armament right now with building out the nuclear weapons heavily. And already today, the Chinese Navy is the largest one in the world. Not the best firepower, to underline. The US Navy has a lot stronger firepower, but in the number of vessels, the Chinese Navy is larger now than the US Navy, and by 2030 it will be 50% larger in number of vessels, and that is also an issue of concern when we look at the geopolitical game board.
Yes, we think maybe the next book should be China's Europe, and this is something that we're really thinking about right now. And because we are running out of time, I would like to ask this one final question to all of you. And one of the authors from the publication said that Putinism means violence, right? That there is no Putinism without violence, and violence basically equals to Putinism as ideology. Then Patrick mentioned that we have the superpower of democracy, and Professor Raggiola said that we have culture, which is different, which is our weapon. I would like to ask you about liberalism and like this liberal response. What can be this liberal response to the crisis we are having? Is there anything specific to liberals, to liberalism, that could be part of our answers? Anything different that everybody else is saying? Like, what is the liberal answer to Putin's Europe?
Me? Yeah.
Everybody, please. As a final remark.
You want to start?
Anybody?
Okay, I'll start, but I'm not sure I have an answer. I think I can say something. I've just been thinking about this recently because a politician in a panel like this asked a rhetorical question: why was I elected? I'm not sure what makes me electable. And then I thought this is a fairly, weak self-presentation, especially for a liberal, but it really made me think. And what I liked about it was the authenticity of that question, because the person had some issues finding the answer for themselves. And I think that very often we talk about, because the manifestation of the problems that we're talking about here is very much so radical right populism in Europe, but also very often this populism is left and right, and it's center left and center right including. And I think that what liberals we have lost as a community, and the politicians within this community, they've lost their authenticity, and actually liberals should be the most authentic in the way I see it. So I think that stop talking about what other people are doing and what we will do, because this is, I think, the best rule in politics. And then going back to this authenticity, because populists learn to be authentic. They resonate very easily with voters very often, and I think that this is something we lack, but we lack it in action, but not in substance. So I think it's something we can go back to, but that's, of course, a very general answer.
Thank you.
If I agree with Mila, because the idea is, from a side being positive, from another being negative. The negative way is unveiling the false way other people are communicating with the electors. And the positive way from a liberal point of view, and I answer it into my chapter, because I divided liberalism into external liberalism and internal liberalism, which is a great difference between Western, so between Europe and Russia. But our, our challenge is to offer an external way of being liberal, of being free. So being free and be plural. The way of, the pluralism is, I think, the key word to offer a different way to be free, because we can be free by our own. We can be free in our house, in a domestic way, but maybe it's not enough.
I think a liberal answer must be defending the baseline and remember that the baseline is under threat. And here I mean rule of law, division of power, freedom of the press, freedom of belief, freedom of opinion, and to understand and try to put into a tale about our time what could be lost. And also in this tale talk about all the dark things that could happen, but without giving up the hope that we actually have this superpower, to go back to that. And liberals in many countries have been a bit of the fat cat syndrome after the Berlin Wall was tearing down and everything was looking good. So when things started to slip some 15, 17 years ago, when we started to see the slippery slope of democracy in various indexes, we reacted very slow, because mentally we believed that things would almost fix itself without us getting engaged. And here we need to find this engagement back again. And in order to do that, we need to have the insights of what could go wrong.
I would like to add to Patrick, watching the other side of the coin. And I will go back to Acemoglu and Robinson. And so the power of inclusiveness that we have with our democracies, that we have to remember that all our democracies are liberal democracies. So for sure to protect the baseline, but it is much more than that. Liberals can say that the promise for each individual citizens to have his human rights protected and to realize his own goal, his own life, and his own perspective in the long run and also in the short run. Whereas in the other systems, this kind of protection, this kind of possibilities of having for everyone to have this inclusiveness in the self-realization is not permitted, because the other systems that are authoritarian regimes. So I would like to use that kind of term more than violence. In authoritarian regimes, we have violence as an important part. But in authoritarian regimes, you have some big part of society that is excluded from the benefit of economic, social, and political improvement. And I think that this is a strong message. So it's a fundamental message, but again, it's a strong message. And I would like to finish remarking that populism we can take just for Taggart definition, like a thin ideology, okay? So it is more than an instrument, but we have to divide between democratic populism that can be center-left, center-right, far-right, far-left, but still using the democratic and accepting the democratic mechanism within political system, and the others that are not democratic, so undemocratic populism, that are authoritarian, so is another history. But usually in the, even in scientific debate, you will find those kind of populism sometimes mixed up, and this creates confusions.
I mean, I fully agree, and I can stress one more time, I come from Poland, and we know what populism is, and we know I know what it means to live in a country that is, going into a direction to be an authoritarian country. Luckily, in Poland, the liberal values and democracy prevailed. People went mobilized last year, 75% of the population. For the first time, we reached level of turnout like this, even higher than when we were voting against communism in 1989 to fight back against populism. And we stop it. But I think just what I'm trying to say with that if we want to beat this authoritarian, totalitarian populism or authoritarianism, we also have to be able and know how to beat this light populism in our home. And in the context of the EU, we have Trojan horses, I believe. We have countries that are cooperating with Putin, China, you name it, that are acting against us, against our common values. And I think we need to be able to clean our own house before we will be able to go on a battle against these very, very dark forces. But still, thank you very much for the panel. Thank you very much for the active discussion with the audience. It has been a pleasure to be here. And I encourage you one more time to download the publication from the European Liberal Forum's website. And now we'll have some time for conversations with a cup of coffee and a cookie. Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure. I really like your passion to democracy.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure.
So you teach political science? Or you research? Or?
Well, no, I'm an associate of history of international relations here, but I was a postdoc of political science.
Gotcha, okay. So I can hear.
And I've been teaching for 15 years comparative politics. That's why.
Okay.
And I'd like to thank you for your participation, and this is a publication.
Oh, thank you very much.
But this is like topics. This is politics. Okay.
Okay, sorry.
That's not yours.
So this is
You have your own copy.
Thank you very much.
And the gift from Poland.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
that's very kind of you.
This was something.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
I think we share the same idea.
Yes, and I wanted to comment something that you said, talking about what it actually thinks of and so it's actually such a big achievement, just not going to someone who's going to build in the region. And then I just think that it's time for us to kind of put up again this shift. I think we start articulating what liberals in our region, they're not yeah, and it's become actually a way that we can talk about it if we want to. Yes. So I like this.
And all the oligarchs have shaped because you were saying pessimistic part. They should have. I would have said. So for this, you say, okay, I would say. You could, for once, play the good cop. Oh yeah. Otherwise, I assume you are the bad cop. Yes, yes. I hope it is possible to see it online.
I think this is no, ci sono i miei assistenti che volevano sentire meglio la risposta sulla prospettiva di se dovesse vincere
Professoressa,
no, avevo sentito la risposta sua, ci sarà un po'
e quindi qual è la io penso che Biden vediamo diretto quindi da questo punto di vista diciamo la prospettiva di una pace vicina siamo tanti perché le posizioni dell'Ucraina ma è chiaro che il contratto e le possibilità di raggiungere un accordo sono più alte con base sull'universalità però io anche la possibilità di una guerra diciamo generalizzata io non la vedo cioè con Biden si andrebbe di più verso il rischio di uno stallo diciamo, o la vietnamizzazione oppure la guerra allora, tutto questo fa parte della retorica della guerra fredda che è ritornata e poi quasi tutti ci sono le altre che dicono prima sì, a forza, certo. Ma no, risponderà sempre.